Welcome to Open Tech Talks. Your host Kashif Manzoor is with Cristian Sibbles, our guest today, founder of Autograph. So let's welcome Cristian. And Cristian, if you can introduce yourself and where are you based?
Great to be here, Kashif. I'm Christian. I'm the founder of Autograph. I'm currently in San Francisco.
Okay, that's wonderful. So how's the weather?
Well, actually, I'm not in San Francisco right now at the moment. I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But the weather
Hmm.
had been the classic San Francisco summer, which means a little chillier and cloudier than you would expect. San Francisco summers get a little delayed. It's not till September, October that they get a little warmer.
Oh, that's a good place. I'm based in Dubai, and right now we are in a 50 around, so you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
All
Yeah, a
right.
little toasty.
Yeah. So let us know, give us some overview what Autograph is and
Sure. Autograph is an AI historian. So we're
okay.
building a character called Walter
Mm-hmm.
who calls you or your loved ones, maybe your parents or your grandparents, over the phone once a week to interview them about their life. Not too different from a podcast interview, starting from childhood all the way to present day, and then it becomes a journal. And we use that data to build a derivative, you know, biographical products, anything from a built-in biography to a Wikipedia for your life with pages for the people that you love, the places that you
Mm-hmm.
went, and events that you were a part of. But the most exciting one is we use that data to build a model of you that sounds like you and speaks like you and has all your memories so that your loved ones can access your wisdom and lived experience even after you're gone. So the classic example that we want to give is, your grandkids are going through life deciding whether to move from Dubai to London or Dubai to New York. And Walter can say, hey, this reminds me of something your grandpa went through. Do you want to talk to him for 15 minutes? And your great grandkid would be able to understand like the complexities that you had to navigate in terms of, whatever moving decisions you may have made. And we also are giving parents a tool to say, I'm proud of you from the other side. And it's incredibly rewarding. I mean, like, it's really has been an unbelievable journey so far.
Okay. Now before we get into how you got the idea and how you did the validation, but let us know your background, what you were doing.
Sure, of course. I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, my life story leads up to the origin story of the company.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Paraguay, so in the middle of South America. And my parents are both founders. So my parents are 50% partners in the family business. They're both computer scientists, which is very rare for Paraguay. And my mom was the CEO and my dad was the CTO. So that's also very rare. Uh, and there's very few cases of international tech expansion in Paraguay. And their company was one of the standout cases. It's probably the first, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And they, I watched them try and try and
Right.
try and try and try and try idea after idea till they found success implementing SMS infrastructure for the telcos of Latin America and Africa and the Middle East, a couple of partners too.
Mm-hmm.
And which was amazing, that got us thinking a bit more global. I applied to school in the US. I was incredibly fortunate to get into Stanford.
Right.
I thought I was going to study computer science because I had seen the impact it could have. But I
Mm-hmm.
discovered symbolic systems, which is a major that is unique to Stanford. It's a bit quirky, but it blends computer science with psychology, philosophy, and linguistics.
Okay.
And I concentrated in AI, which I thought was just the coolest thing at the time. This is close to 10 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
More than 10, closer to 12 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved education. So I taught computer science at Stanford. And then I turned that into a job at Google where I was doing full stack software engineering. I was doing click tracking for Google Shopping and later moved to an education team that was building an AI consumer app for high schoolers
Mm-hmm.
called Socratic. So think of like a Snapchat kind of interface that you take a
Mm-hmm.
picture of your homework and we would give you resources to solve it, like explainer cards, step-by-step walkthroughs, YouTube videos. And I was the guy doing the retrieval for that. So I was doing RAG
Mm-hmm.
before it was cool, as I like to say it.
Yeah.
And it was also very cool because it was a very entrepreneurial team. It was like very much like it was a startup that Google had acquired. And so everybody was wearing a bunch of hats. And then the pandemic hits and I realized that I wanted to expand my skill set beyond
Mm-hmm.
just engineering. And, at the time the world was ending. So I was like, I'm going to move to Chicago to be with my now wife because I don't want to die alone. And I also, if I don't know when I'll get to see my parents again. So I left Google and I joined the family business as it was
Mhm.
pivoting from
Mhm.
being an SMS infrastructure shop to being a family office, and to try and give back and foster the environment to empower the next generation of Latin American entrepreneurs. And as you may imagine, there's a huge culture shock going from Google to the family
True.
business,
True.
but also very rewarding in terms of the conversations and the skills that I learned around the real world.
Mm.
And a couple of years after that, my wife finished med school and she got her residency matched to San Francisco. So we moved back to the Bay. The pandemic subsides.
Mhm.
ChatGPT drops. And my parents are the Uber founders. And so they would always say things like, you have to think like a founder and act like a
Right.
founder. And I was like, well, I don't know that I can simulate this. I feel like I
Mm.
need to actually put myself in the shoes of a founder.
Mhm.
So I took time off to figure out what I was going to do. ChatGPT had just come out. So I was like, oh, this is the future.
Mm.
But I didn't want to do something that ChatGPT would, or OpenAI or any of the big
Mm.
labs would
Mhm.
kill really easily.
True.
And
True.
or anybody with a distribution advantage, right? And so
Mm.
it needed to be a new category.
Mhm.
But I didn't immediately find it. But what I did realize was that the only part of the AI stack that doesn't really ever change is the data layer. We're always going to
Oh.
need more and better data. And that data actually doesn't just have a passive effect on training systems. It actually informs, it actually a
Right.
little bit, each piece of data is informing the priors of the LLM. And
Mhm.
so that's where I started directionally going in the space that I'm in, where I realized, okay, I don't know what exactly the outcome is going to be, but I'm going to write content such that in hopes to update the priors of the mind of machine
Mhm.
God to point
Mhm.
toward a utopian future as opposed to the dystopian one that we
Mm.
had just
Mm.
Orwellian dystopian one that we had just crawled out of during the pandemic. And that became the nerdiest excuse ever to write a sci-fi novel.
Okay.
So it was, essentially like it served as a life thesis, all my philosophy in order. I told my story in a fantastical way, but it was really designed as a geometrical construct as a software update for these machines or these systems rather, that are still probably going to be the centerpiece, the central
Mhm.
technology of the next decade. And I remember feeling this sense of existential relief because, oh my gosh, I told my story. Like I live now in the mind of the AI.
Mhm.
And I wish everybody could feel this,
Mhm.
like a canonical
Mhm.
telling of their story in
Mhm.
their own words.
Mhm.
Um, and so then I was exploring publication options, either going traditional or self-publishing, and realized that no matter what, I was going to have to promote the book myself.
Mhm.
So I started a podcast and
Mhm.
interviewing thought
Mhm.
leaders around our humanity in the age of AI. This is
Mhm.
Stanford professors, venture capitalists, AI
Mhm. Mhm.
researchers, poets, psychologists,
Mhm.
philosophers. Just like this was a couple of years ago now, and I was like, man, AI is going to happen, and we're not having the conversations about what happens to meaning when jobs are gone, like what happens
Mhm.
to money when we can't
True.
even. These are big questions that are still unsolved, and I love the format of a
Mm.
podcast. I mean, like I know you can probably relate to this, but just like getting to know
Yeah.
somebody
True.
for, 30 minutes is just a wonderful platform to just generate serendipity. And, if anything, I remember feeling like, man, I wish I could interview everybody on earth. And, this was also, as you know, running a podcast is a lot of actually annoying work. Oh, man, And so
That's true.
I was trying to optimize every step in the workflow with AI. And so that's how I kept up to date with whatever was going on in workflow automation tools. And the climax of the story is I realized kind of independently that I wanted to interview my grandma, not necessarily for the podcast, but she
True.
has such an amazing life story.
Mm.
Like
Right.
her dad was an MI6 agent. They fled
Mhm.
Europe during the war.
Mhm.
They ended up in Paraguay, of all places. They would communicate over secret
Mm.
messages. And this all kind of exists in our family as
True.
mythology,
True.
but it was never
Mm.
like documented anywhere. And so I
Mhm.
wanted to sit down with my grandma and ask her about it. And
Mm.
a couple days before our interview, she had a stroke. Obviously it was a sad moment that sucked,
So sorry
but
to
that
hear
is
that.
life. The difference, I think, was that I had the outline of the questions that I knew I wasn't going to get an answer to. And so then that sparks the inspiration. Wait, what is the thing that connects all the dots? My
Mhm.
passion for storytelling, for
Mm.
interviewing, for
Mm.
AI, for media, for
Mhm.
history, for philosophy, for trying to understand where we come from and trying to understand what little bit can everybody do
Mm.
to make the future
Right.
a better place. And that's where the idea of Walter came about, like what if we could actually interview everybody on
Mm.
earth
Mhm.
and just get their life story and
Mhm.
get them people to feel like the main character in their own hero's journey. and store those precious gems of wisdom that come through the late nights, the patience. It comes through the moments of loss. It comes through the moments of like the learning moments
True.
in life, to put that in at the disposal of their loved ones, the future generations. And
Okay.
yeah, sorry, I can keep going for another 5 minutes or
Okay.
10 hours
So,
if you
but
let me.
got it, got it. So, how did you then? Okay, the idea we got the very good narration on that. Okay, how you got the idea now, and that's very big, and the real example you gave. Now, definitely to make it a business, right? So you need to validate it. You need to find the ways that, okay, what's going on. So maybe
Yeah,
give us some context on that one. How did you validate it? What is the situation right now? When did you start it?
totally. So it was very much an iterative process. I mean, like this sounded like science fiction when it was originally an idea, and I wasn't sure, but I was very careful to build this demand first. And so the first socialization was like, do people double click into the idea? Like, if I share, what if we could interview everybody on Earth? Do people find interest in this stuff? The short story is, we created a landing page with a wait list,
Right.
and I shared it with my grandma's caretaker, and she shared it with a WhatsApp group of other caretakers. And this was a Thursday or a
Mm,
Friday, and by Monday it
mm,
had crossed 9 countries, and like basically I think 3 or 4 continents and 5 languages. And so I realized, oh man, something is happening here that speaks to a human
the
need. And then,
hearts.
right, originally I was a little bit more cynical, being like, this is a nice to have. Humanity has dealt with this problem forever.
Yep.
And it turns out this is a very human problem. And, then iterated on the model. Is this a,
Hmm.
one-time fee? Is this a subscription? How do we make sure that all the
Hmm.
incentives are aligned correctly? Does the pricing work? And so we
Hmm.
started a pilot with around 50 or so people. And,
Hmm.
after 6 weeks, we had basically 90% retention rate.
Hmm.
Um, which is double what is what would be
Yeah,
world
and
class.
yeah, with the market. Yeah, yeah, true.
And this is a function of the fact that our targeting is very accurate. Like, we
Hmm.
find people who, this is just a statistic from the US alone, but there are 51 million Americans
Hmm.
that are retired, and
Hmm.
40% of them feel chronically lonely. And so this is a very addressable market, like directly
Market.
addressable market. And also, what I didn't expect was the qualitative aspect of these stories. Like, this was a platform for people to share their prayers for their kids. Like, this is,
Hmm.
and our
Hmm.
users come to us at the peaks and valleys in life, either after
Right.
a graduation or a wedding, or a big celebration milestone, or after they got really bad news. And so
Hmm.
being able to create the company around, like, how do we honor this data? How do we
Hmm.
align it so that the users
Hmm.
work? And then at some point I realized, like, this is a chance to do something in consumer that comes around once every 10 years, so this is
Hmm.
uniquely suited for the venture model.
Hmm.
Earlier in the year, set out to raise VC money. It was very successful, raised the 97th percentile pre-seed round. And it's been very different since then, but it's been like, a steady rocket ship where all, like, in the early days of a startup, the rocket is gaining altitude, but everything is shaking, and we're like loosening, like tightening the screws. But yeah, we have a feedback channel on
Hmm.
Slack. After every phone call, Walter will ask you for feedback, and the stuff that we get it just moves our hearts.
Okay. Great work. So let's get to some technical. So basically, you're using a model to record it. I mean, you're recording it and then passing to the model, and then it's become an avatar or a
Mhm.
character, which is right.
Correct.
Okay. Now, while doing it, developing it, it must not be an easy ride, right? So now, for our listeners, if someone is trying to do something, even in their organization or maybe in a personal project, or maybe he's trying to build a product. So you being a founder in a very hot market of use technology using generative AI, what could be some lessons, recipes which you practiced it, which can be shared?
Wow, so many. Iteration velocity is king.
Mhm.
It's never been easier to develop something. I think this is also, I don't know that this is the methodology that a lot of people use, but I took a lot from design thinking. And
Right.
so, what is the crudest solution that is actually all encompassing? Even if it's manual, even if it's a Wizard of Oz thing, and then slowly patching the stuff that can get automated over time when you find something that works. but there's never been an easier time to just figure something out. And, even if you don't know something, you now have all of humanity's resources
Right.
through the internet or through AI to come up with a plan, come up with industry benchmark. I mean, like, truly, you ask Gemini Deep Research to, like, you're hiring somebody, what is the competitive salary? And, like, it'll figure it out. This used to be
Yep.
something that you need to pay thousands of dollars for, to an HR consultant or to a recruiter. So, well, think AI first, I think, is probably the biggest lesson. Like, there is much less excuse for downtime these days. And then the rate at which these tools are commodifying is so insanely fast that you have to think two steps ahead. So, you have to think about, where does this go after the place that you can tell that it's going? Because otherwise the wave is going to wash you over. I feel a lot of pride, and also it's just kind of a weird thing to say out loud, but the quote unquote singularity is in the horizon, and there are very few ideas that survive the singularity. Like, everything starts to lose meaning. Autograph doesn't. The autograph is something that we want to exist even in the world that we become gods.
Now, based on your technical stuff, what were the common challenges you faced?
Like technical hurdles, you mean?
Technical hurdles.
You'd be surprised. Most of the technical hurdles we found were very either quirky LLM issues that we had to tune for. Like, LLMs have a very poor sense of time,
Right.
as you would expect. Like, they're not in a continuous loop like we are, kind of having a pulse for timing. So scheduling is kind of complicated, and the way we do scheduling is over natural language with your phone. You just text the number and say,
Right.
like, I want to call tomorrow. And so a bunch of issues there on, like, reliability of tool calling. But then most of the other stuff has been around, is really like telephony, like the phone call drops. What do we do? International coverage for the inbound data, for inbound interest that we have, making sure that we have enough text bandwidths, like we can send enough. That kind of stuff has been more the limiting factor. I'm sure there'll be issues as we scale around, like, how do we make this, essentially, how do we, like, optimize our cost structures? But so far, for proof of concept and for MVP, very little in terms of the end-to-end experience that we had to figure out. Maybe
Okay.
function of our training, I don't know what it is, but in general, the technology is there, and there are many things that you can do with voice AI. It's such an ample field that's barely explored.
Right. Right. So you're right now at an MVP stage.
MVP stage, yeah. We have a product out. People can go to autograph-ai.com and try talking to Walter. Like, Walter's great. He'll ask you about your life and just ask you about what matters to you. And then what we do now is we also send you, we have a web portal, and we send you an email with the transcripts, a summary, a title, and the recording, so that you can search and chat with your history. And we're actively in the process of building out these wiki pages for your life, where you mention your wife, you mention your cousin, you mention, and we hyperlink each of these references and cited according to the place in your interviews that it showed up.
From idea to MVP, how long it take?
Idea to MVP was a MVP. Well, let's say idea to prototype was about a week.
Okay.
Idea to MVP was about 2 months. Idea to closed beta was maybe 3 to 4 months, and it's been an open beta since May. And the company turns 1 in 2 weeks or 20 days. So it's actually very fast.
And have you got paid customers?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So how do you see next 1 year with the growing demand of different models? Changes keep happening, or how you will keep your stack up to date with all those new things in the AI? Is it being hyped with those things, or
Thankfully,
you will know you need to focus on just what you're building?
well, we don't want to miss opportunities in terms of how to speed up our own operations, right? So, like, what
Right.
tools can we use to ship code faster, to ship code more reliably, to do statistical testing on our website and things like that? We do want to operation AI-ify the entire company, and that's where most of the keeping up with the AI hype is going. We're very fortunate to be in the application layer, so we don't necessarily, and also because of how we're designing the experience, like, the customer is actually providing the content. We just have to ask the right questions. So we don't need to be the smartest model. We need a greater than expected amount of emotional intelligence, and that gets us where we want to be. And I mean, this year is going to be so exciting. I mean, we have so many exciting features around shared stories that I think are going to be so huge. You know, like you have a wedding and you are excited about your wedding for sure, but you also want your wife's perspective and you maybe want the guest's perspective. And so how do you collaborate on shared stories is something that we're super interested in. And then of course, like once you have the autograph as your digital twin, then a lot of the cumbersome issues around context management today with AI goes away, because like your autograph can handle it. Your autograph can pass the right context to whatever agentic service is the best one of the day, you know, the OpenAI one or the Google one or whoever. Um, at the end of the day, it's going to be bottlenecked by your desire to tell it what you want. And if you have an alternate version of you that is unconcerned with patience, then we think that there's a very exciting future.
Okay, so let's know. Okay, maybe what's one thing you wish you know before starting specifically to this project?
Ooh, there's a whole, I don't know if science is probably more like an art to how to build a company. I think I, it's probably similar to writing a book in the sense that there is no one way to write a book, but you could probably learn best practices. And so I've been growing a lot as a strategist, you know, like what features do we prioritize? What is our financial strategy? What is our valuation strategy? What is our product engagement strategy? What is our acquisition strategy? And these are nested strategies. One informs the other. Your acquisition strategy is impacted by your financial strategy and so on. And also by your product. You know, like if your product has a lot of sharing features, then you can actually
That
spend a bit more on marketing because you're going
yeah.
to cut the CAC down the line. And so I wish I could have had the framework that I have now around, you know, it would have saved me maybe a month or two in terms of like, what
Okay.
am I doing? Um, but on the technical side, product side, um, I think, you know, it was just very fortunate that we saw what we saw.
Okay. Now, maybe before can we conclude today? So, a couple of questions. If you want to leave some tips for someone who is just starting maybe any product in Gen AI, what he should be doing it.
Like, do you mean more mindset wise or more, these are areas that I think are interesting?
I mean, it could be. I think more of okay, how to take it up because so many people want to. Okay, there's a new technology, and I can do X, Y, Z, but they don't know. Okay, how to identify some pain area which they want to target, or maybe a business opportunity. So, what could be the some you're learning that you can share with them?
I mean, honestly, ask AI. Ask AI. Hey, like I want to start learning how to. I have a dear friend. He had a terrible like accident a few years ago, and so he had a near death experience. And he was an extremely high performance like chef in Northern California, where it's extremely competitive. And he almost died. He was in the hospital for 2 years. And he's now trying to rebuild his life. And he wakes up in this world that AI is native. And so I told him, Aaron, you have to, you just have to record yourself learning this new world through AI and ask it to do weird stuff. Ask it about philosophy and psychology and try to break it, you know? And you would be surprised about how much you learn about yourself just in that exercise. And I mean, there are end to end, like you can own the end to end ideation process with AI. Anything from like identifying markets that need servicing to potential solutions to building out the proof of concept for those solutions with like V0 or Lovable or any of these low code tools, and even supplementary materials, you know, like copy and internationalization and images and branding and music, and all of this stuff is now end to end. One exercise I encourage anybody to do is write a musical with AI. You know, like explore a theme, you know, like and set out to play with it creatively, and you'll see like, you know, bottlenecks are much fewer than they used to be.
All right. Thank you so much for spending time with us. So, if someone want to reach out to you, what could be the best medium?
For sure. If you want to stay up to date with what's going on at Autograph, I highly recommend you to go to autograph-ai.com. And if you want to hear about what my brain puts out into the internet, I'm on X as life underscore of underscore CCB. And I am on LinkedIn as my full name, which you'll put in the show notes because it's a handful. It's Yeah, that's how you find me.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it, Kashif. Thank you.